Hello and welcome back to the Garnet Cowboys Sports Show. I'm your host, Chase Harrington, as always. Glad to be back recording today. Thank you guys for watching and, liking and sharing the last video. I do appreciate it, and the comments and everything. I do appreciate it, so thank you for that. Today I'll be giving you my game-by-game prediction for the South Carolina Gamecocks in the 2026 football season. So I'm excited to talk about that in the full schedule and just kind of give you my thoughts on where I think South Carolina will end up at the end of this season. Obviously, we'll go ahead and address, the elephant in the room, if you will, with Jaden Sellers and Jaden Gibson being out for the entirety of the season. That's a tough blow for South Carolina. The injury bug bites South Carolina again. We should be used to it at this point. It seems like it's every year. There's always something with injuries or whatever the case may be. It's just something to always take us a step back and kind of something we've struggled with, every single season. So sucks to see that happen. Sucks, I hate it for both of those guys. Thoughts and prayers out to them and their families in that situation. I guess the only thing you could take from it that's not a negative is the depth isn't completely ruined, I guess. We got a lot of receivers, a lot of depth at receiver. Jaden Sellers may have been a starter. I think it was between him and Mazio Bennett, who would be starting in that slot position. Mazio Bennett looking to have a breakout year this year. I thought he might win the job anyway. But hopefully there's depth behind Mazio, and Jaden Gibson probably would have been the backup to Nick Harbor over on the outside. So obviously all we can do is just hope and pray that it's not a big deal and it doesn't affect their team. Obviously we want them to get better and we hate it, but I don't think that's going to be a game changer of any sort with them going down, but it will suck to lose that depth. But anyways, so today I'm going to do my game-by-game prediction, and I know a lot of you guys aren't going to agree with it, especially ones that aren't Carolina fans. But the more and more I look at this schedule, I can't help but, be happy with the way that it's lined up, the way it pans out for South Carolina this season. South Carolina always has to deal with a tough schedule. Every season, it seems like South Carolina's got one of the top 5 hardest schedules in the country. And it always starts off very, very early in the season when we have a tough matchup. But looking at this schedule, obviously the first 2 games are cupcakes, if you will. And so that's a good thing for them this season. We'll go through game by game and talk about why I think South Carolina will win or will lose that game and give you my final prediction on what I think South Carolina's final record will be this upcoming season and how it'll pan out. There's a lot of factors that work into it. Obviously, I'm basing it off if everybody stays healthy. And when I say everybody, I mean the game changers, Sellers, Harbor, Stewart, guys like that. As long as they stay healthy, this is what I'm basing my predictions off of. But obviously, injuries can change that, and then it'd be a different story or whatever. But anyways, we'll go ahead and look at the schedule. Obviously, I think it's a given the first 2 games. You got Kent State and then you got Towson. I don't think South Carolina is going to have – and let me go ahead and tell you this real quick while we're on these 2 games. And this is what I mean by South Carolina getting, a little bit of a break here. Typically, South Carolina always starts the season out. They might start out with game 1 with a cupcake. But it's always that week 2. I feel like they always run into somebody that's a losable game. They don't really get enough time to adjust and get their offense in order and defense in order before they start playing tough matchups. But the way this schedule lines up, it's almost ideal if you're a South Carolina Gamecock fan. We'll get right into it, and I'll tell you why and why not South Carolina will lose these games, the big games anyway. Obviously, you start off 1-0, Kent State. Should be an easy win there. It's in Columbia. I think a 12:45 kickoff. I don't have the kickoff times here in front of me. I kind of know by memory what they are. But you got Kent State, obviously, week 1. You're going to win that game. You're 1-0. Okay, week 2, Towson comes to town. Night game, Willie B. Again, easy win for South Carolina there. The things we want to look for in these games is improvement on the offensive line, for instance, and then the offense as a whole. But obviously the defense, you still want to see them play well, but we can almost kind of count on them to play well these days with Clayton White as the defensive coordinator. But you're 2-0. Now this is where it gets interesting, right? And this is what I mean why I like the schedule setup. Mississippi State comes to Columbia, Williams-Brice Stadium, week 3. And I like this matchup being right here for South Carolina because now you're not, in years past, it's Cupcake and then it's boom, Georgia, Cupcake, boom, LSU, Cupcake, boom, then you got Alabama or whatever the case may be. Now you kind of get on the easier side of the SEC this season with this Mississippi State game. So now you're going from Cupcake teams, Towson, Kent State, and then you're moving into Mississippi State, which is up in competition, but it's not a massive jump. It's not like you're going to play Georgia. So now you get to test your team somewhat and see what your team's made of against an SEC opponent. We're the SEC opponent, but I'm not real high on Mississippi State. So obviously I don't see South Carolina losing this game. Obviously they have to show up and play hard if they want to try to win this game. But I think they get it done pretty easily. I think South Carolina gets on a roll right here. They're 3-0, and then just the matchup. That way, it would have worried me had South Carolina been playing Alabama this week or Georgia this week or Tennessee or Oklahoma or somebody like that in that week 3 matchup. Then I would have been kind of concerned. But Mississippi State there, I think that's huge for South Carolina. And I think they get to win, and I think they win pretty big there. I think South Carolina, that's the game where they kind of get things rolling and kind of make a statement and get the offense going. So looking forward to that matchup. And then week 4 at Alabama. I believe that's a night kickoff. I've went back and forth on this game several times trying to decide who's going to win this one. South Carolina and Alabama played very, very close games the last couple seasons. And 2 games South Carolina really should have won, in my honest opinion. But like I said, I really think they get things rolling against Mississippi State, and that's why I've settled on the fact that I think South Carolina upsets Alabama in Tuscaloosa at night right here and gets the win against Alabama. And I think South Carolina's sitting at 4-0 through their first 4 games. I know people are going to think I'm crazy, whatever, but again, not only me, but a lot of people aren't that high on Alabama this year. I just think it's the right spot, right time for South Carolina to kind of come in there and get a win. Who knows? Maybe Alabama overlooks South Carolina again, and South Carolina is able to finally get it done. I just have a gut feeling that South Carolina gets it done here. So I got South Carolina sitting at 4-0 heading into week 5 against Kentucky. The Kentucky Wildcats, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback. What does Kentucky have? What did Kentucky do in the transfer portal? They've added some guys. They should have a decent team, but South Carolina, now this is tricky because I have South Carolina coming off a win versus Alabama, right? So this could be one of those slip-up games where South Carolina kind of overlooks Kentucky, and Kentucky comes in there and gives them a pretty decent game at home at night. I'll actually be at this game, but I just don't think it would be enough. I think maybe Kentucky keeps it closed for the first half, and then South Carolina kind of rallies and comes back and wins that football game. So I got South Carolina beating Kentucky and sitting at 5-0, and then they're heading into week 6 against the Florida Gators. Now, I will say this. If this game was at night and not a noon kickoff or 1 o'clock kickoff, whatever it is, if this game was at night and South Carolina was going to the Swamp, because obviously they would be ranked at this point, sitting at 5-0, and they were heading into the Swamp, Florida, new head coach, John Summerall, and new OC and new quarterbacks, all those good things. I think this will be a scary matchup, and it's going to still be a scary matchup for South Carolina, but I just think with it being that noon kickoff or 1 o'clock kickoff, that it really plays an advantage for South Carolina. The crowd's not into it as much, and it's just it's not as electric as it would be if it was a night game. So I do have South Carolina beating Florida in Gainesville, week 6, and moving on to 6-0. And who knows how long it's been since South Carolina's been 6-0. And I know a lot of people think probably, hey, this guy's crazy. He's just talking crazy. He don't know what he's talking about. And that's fine. Everybody has their opinion and whatnot, and that's cool and fine and dandy or whatever. I just when I look at South Carolina this season, I just see a lot of talent on this team. You got some of the best players in the country on your team, 3 of them at that. Nick Harbert, receiver, Sellers, quarterback, and Dylan Stewart at defensive end. And I think those guys will take that next step in improving and getting better. And then I'm putting more emphasis on Kendall Browse coming in here and taking over for Mike Shula, because Mike Shula was a disaster, and I knew he would be a disaster. And I'm not going to keep going back and talking about Shula and all that. I just think there will be a much different South Carolina team that takes the field this upcoming season, especially offensively. I think the O-line will be much improved. I think the receivers will be improved. I think the running game will be very, very, very much improved. And I think Sellers will be one of those guys this season that we're looking at near the end of the season saying, wow, this guy may be a Heisman Trophy winner or candidate at least. But anyways, bye week after Florida. South Carolina 6-0 going into the bye week, which is a good thing. You get a breather, you get a break, and then you come back home, an afternoon game, evening game against Tennessee Volunteers. Now, this could be a tricky game. I don't know what Tennessee has going into the season. I don't keep up with Tennessee or anything like that. I know Tennessee's typically a good team year in and year out. You know, they're not a great team, but they're a good team. And this is a game South Carolina's going to have to watch out for. You know, I like the bye week being there because you get a break and you get a chance to regroup and, you know, recalibrate and get things going again and get the team motivated again to keep going. I like South Carolina at home here versus Tennessee in a big game here. South Carolina sitting at 7-0 now, and man, that would be a great season for South Carolina right there. A huge win to get to 7-0 and be sitting pretty in the SEC. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Halloween Day, South Carolina travels to Oklahoma. I want to say this is a night game. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's a night game. This is going to be a difficult one. I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be a difficult in Norman night. 2 ranked teams going at it. Who knows where South Carolina's ranked at this point? Probably, obviously, in the top 10 somewhere. So things could get interesting right here. Honestly, I have South Carolina losing this football game. I have South Carolina dropping this one to Oklahoma in Norman. I think if it was at Williams-Brice, maybe a different story, but it being at Oklahoma, I'm going to take Oklahoma in this one to take down South Carolina in Norman. So that'll be South Carolina's first loss. I think they're sitting at 7-1 at this point. South Carolina comes back home, and they take on the Texas A&M Aggies. We all know what happened a season ago, 30-3, halftime. A&M comes back and wins that football game, 31-30. I think South Carolina is going to have a lot to play for in that game. I think they're going to want that one back and get that one back against A&M. I don't think they're going to let that happen again. I do think it will be a good game. A&M's probably sitting at a good spot in the season right here at a good point, probably with a good record. But I have South Carolina bouncing back right there and taking down Texas A&M and improving to 8-1 on the season. Next up, South Carolina travels to Arkansas, November 14th. They're playing in Fayetteville, Arkansas. They'll be taking on the Razorbacks. Another interesting matchup there. What is Arkansas this season? I'm not high on them, but I don't keep up with Arkansas, but obviously a new coach and everything like that. So I think they're kind of in the rebuild process, if you will, and I think South Carolina handles them pretty well and gets it done. Against Arkansas, at Arkansas, I think South Carolina goes in there and probably wins that one pretty handily on the road for a big road win. Now, November 21st, Georgia comes to town to Columbia. This is that one, where it's just Kirby Smart, Shane Beamer, everything going on there. I just don't see South Carolina pulling this one out. Now, hear me out. It will be an electric atmosphere. South Carolina will give Georgia everything they could possibly imagine. It will be a great game. You can count on that. The only problem I have is Georgia's, I think, will be playing for a lot more at that point than South Carolina. Not saying South Carolina won't be playing for a lot. Obviously, they're trying to make the playoffs. But I think Georgia's playoff hopes will be on the line 100% that game, and it will be a must-win. And I just think Kirby Smart will get it done that game. So now I got South Carolina sitting at 9-2, heading into rivalry week against their rivals, the Clemson Tigers, or the Clemsucks Tigers, I should say. Yeah, if you know me, never, ever, ever in a million years would I ever pick Clemson to beat South Carolina. I don't care if South Carolina is 0-11 and Clemson's undefeated. Doesn't matter. I'll never pick Clemson to beat South Carolina. Matter of fact, I'll never pick Clemson to win any game. Furman, high school teams, it doesn't matter. I'll always pick South Carolina to beat Clemson. So that's no different here. I got South Carolina taking down the Clemson Tigers at Memorial Stadium in Clemson. South Carolina improves to 10-2 right there. So that's my final record prediction for South Carolina is 10-2. I got them making the playoff and possibly the SEC championship, depending on how things play out there. But certainly they'll be in the playoff mix, and South Carolina's first playoff ever. I really do think they have the team to do it this year. I can't even. I really do. Now, obviously, like we said earlier, they have to stay healthy, especially the main guys, the game changers. Those guys got to stay healthy and keep us in these football games. Now, obviously, I'm hinging a lot here on Kendall Browse and hoping he's bringing the right offensive style for guys like Sellers and this. And then, obviously, he's helping the O-line and things like that. I really see an improved South Carolina team. I hear a lot of good things coming from the scrimmage. The offense looked really well. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for this season to get going. I think we're, 3 Saturdays away from the season kicking off. So, but yeah, you guys comment and let me know what you think South Carolina's final record will be. How you think the season will play out. Obviously, I'd like you guys to continue to like, follow, subscribe, share, all those good things. I do appreciate it very much. Very appreciated. I will say this. A lot of people out there look at this schedule and they're picking team, South Carolina going 6-6 or 5-7 or whatever. That's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that right now. Now, unless some crazy injuries happen or something like that, different. But games like Mississippi State, for instance, I guarantee you that South Carolina takes down Mississippi State week 3, and there's no doubt about that. Now, will it be a good game? Possibly. But South Carolina, what they went through last year, they're not falling to Mississippi State week 3 and already getting an early loss like that. So look for South Carolina to start the season at minimum 3-0. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. I do appreciate it. Again, like, follow, subscribe, comment. I'm on TikTok, Facebook. YouTube is where you can watch the full podcast. And obviously you can go on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to listen to the audio of this podcast if you'd like. So I appreciate you guys. I look forward to talking to you next week. Next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to get into yet. Obviously, it'll be mock game week is what Shane Beamer calls it. So we'll talk about that and the preparations they're making to get ready for Kent State and get ready for the season. So thank you guys. Talk to you next week. And don't forget, go Gamecocks, baby.